Back in 2013, the average American buying a home paid $1,255 a month on their mortgage. That was the number, $1,255. It was not cheap, but it was a number that a working household with a decent income could plan around. By early 2020, just before the pandemic, that number had climbed to $1,456. 7 years of steady market appreciation, and the payment went up $200. $200 over 7 years. Now hold that in your mind. Then the pandemic hit, rates dropped to historic lows. Demand exploded. Prices moved in a way this market had never seen before. And in the 5 years that followed 2020, the average monthly mortgage payment did not go up $200. It went up over $600. By the end of 2025, the average new mortgage payment in the United States crossed $2,000 for the first time in the history of this country. $2,050 a month. That is a 44% increase in 4 years. Not in a generation, not in a decade, in 4 years. At the exact same moment that payments reached that record high, the National Association of Realtors released data showing that first-time homebuyers had fallen to their lowest share of the market since tracking began in 1981. They now represent only 21% of all home purchases, 1 out of every 5 buyers. The median age of those first-time buyers has climbed to 40 years old, also an all-time high. So we have the most expensive entry point in history and the fewest new entrants in history happening simultaneously. These two records did not land on the same page by coincidence. They are connected. They are the result of a market that has structurally separated itself from the population it is supposed to serve. Today, we are going to go through exactly how that happened. What is holding the market in place despite the lack of buyers? Why the supply argument the government keeps pushing does not hold up against the data, and what it means if you own a home, are trying to buy one, or are watching from the sidelines wondering when any of this is going to make sense again. My name is David Cole. I am the editor-in-chief of Housing Intel. This channel exists because the real estate industry has a financial interest in telling you things are fine. We do not. Subscribe now and join the people who are making decisions based on data, not on spin. Let us get into what the numbers actually show. The first thing we need to understand is the gap that created this situation. And to understand it properly, you need to go back further than most analysts are willing to go. Since the year 2000, home prices in the United States have risen 82%. Over that same 25-year period, median household income in the United States has risen approximately 12%. 82 versus 12. That is not a market adjusting to economic conditions. That is a market that has decoupled from the people inside it. Zillow and Redfin data for 2026 both confirm that in the majority of major metro areas, a buyer needs to earn over $100,000 annually just to qualify for a mortgage on a median-priced home. According to a Harris Poll survey conducted in late 2025, approximately 70% of Americans now believe that a 6-figure income is required to enter the housing market. That is not pessimism. That is an accurate reading of what the math produces. And it is important to be specific here because a lot of housing commentary glosses over this. In the 100 largest cities in the country, the income-to-payment ratio has moved beyond what most financial guidelines consider sustainable for a first-time buyer. The conventional rule is that housing should represent no more than 28% of gross monthly income. In market after market, the current payment-to-income ratio for a median-priced home is running between 35 and 45% for a median-earning household. That is not a stretch. That is a structural impossibility for a large share of would-be buyers. The second point is about what the mortgage payment actually includes, and this is where even financially sophisticated people are getting caught by something they did not fully account for. When a buyer locks in a fixed-rate mortgage, they are locking in the principal and interest portion of their monthly cost. That portion does not change over the life of the loan. What changes is everything surrounding it. And in the current environment, the surrounding costs have been rising faster than most homeowners anticipated when they purchased. Homeowners' insurance premiums in the United States have increased over 40% over the past 5 years. That is a national average. In Florida, Texas, California, and other states with concentrated weather or wildfire risk, the increase has been far more severe. Some markets have seen insurance costs double or triple in that window. Homeowners association fees, which apply to an increasing share of American housing stock, have been rising well above the general rate of inflation in many communities. Property taxes reassess as values rise, and maintenance and labor costs have climbed sharply with overall inflation. The result is that a homeowner who bought in 2021 or 2022 with what looked like a manageable fixed payment is now facing a total monthly housing cost that is meaningfully higher than the day they closed. Not because of their mortgage rate, but because of everything around it. This matters for the broader market because it means that even current owners face ongoing pressure. It also means that when a potential buyer models out affordability, they cannot simply look at the payment calculator on a lender's website. The real number is higher. And in an environment where homeowners' insurance is tightening, where some carriers have exited entire states, and where HOA reserves are underfunded in thousands of communities across the country, the trajectory of those surrounding costs is up, not flat. The third point involves the first-time buyer data specifically, because this is where the structural damage to this market is most clearly visible. The 21% figure from the National Association of Realtors is not just a statistical footnote. It has direct implications for how this market functions. Entry-level buyers are the engine of housing market activity. They buy the starter home from the move-up buyer. That frees the move-up buyer to purchase the next tier, which frees that seller to move to the next tier above. The entire chain of transactions that generates market liquidity depends on new buyers entering at the bottom. When entry-level demand collapses, the chain stops. Inventory at the starter level sits. Sellers who need to sell cannot move. The market seizes. The average down payment as a percentage of purchase price has risen to approximately 10%, its highest level since 1989, according to National Association of Realtors data. And that figure is almost misleading in isolation, because while the percentage sounds manageable, the dollar amount behind it has grown dramatically as prices have risen. 10% of a $400,000 home is $40,000. 10% of a $550,000 home, which is close to the national median in many metro areas, is $55,000. For a first-time buyer who has been renting in a high-cost city, saving that kind of cash, while also paying rent, carrying student loans, and managing other forms of consumer debt is not a challenge. It is, for many households, simply not possible within a realistic time horizon. Before we get to the next point, leave a comment below telling us where you are in this market right now. Are you a first-time buyer who has been waiting for years? Are you a current homeowner watching your carrying costs climb month after month? Or are you on the sidelines watching all of this play out and trying to figure out when or whether any of it shifts? We read every comment, and your input shapes the reports we publish. Now back to the data, because this next point is where the story gets more complicated. The fourth point is about who is still buying and why the headline price data keeps looking stable even as the underlying market is under significant stress. Baby boomers represent 42% of all home buyers in 2025 and 52% of all sellers, according to National Association of Realtors data. The median age of a repeat buyer is now 62 years old. The median down payment for those repeat buyers is 23%, also at a record high. These are not buyers who need to qualify from scratch at today's rates and today's prices. These are buyers who accumulated equity over a decade or 2 decades of ownership, who are converting that equity directly into the purchase price of their next home, and who are often paying cash or putting down enough to neutralize the impact of current mortgage rates entirely. This demographic reality is distorting the national data in a specific way. When a cash-heavy boomer buyer purchases a $700,000 home in a desirable retirement market, that transaction gets recorded in the same national median price calculation as a first-time buyer struggling to close on a $300,000 starter home in a secondary market. The high-end transactions pull the median up, and because boomer buyers are concentrated in the higher price tiers, their activity makes the national data look healthier than the full picture justifies. Atom Data Solutions has been tracking this divergence, and their distressed property metrics and equity distribution data both show increasing stress at the entry and mid-range tiers of the market, even as premium tier activity remains relatively stable. The market is not one market. It is 2 markets running on top of each other, and the one that is visible in the headline numbers is not the one that most Americans are trying to participate in. The 5th point is the supply argument, and this one needs to be addressed directly because it has become the dominant policy framing in Washington. The official government position, consistent across multiple administrations and echoed by major industry groups, is that the United States has a shortage of approximately 10 million homes. The implication is that building more homes is the solution to the affordability crisis. The data does not support that framing in a meaningful way. And here is why. The problem is not the number of homes. The problem is the relationship between home prices, construction costs, and household incomes. Builders are not sitting on shovel-ready projects that they are choosing not to build out of caution. They are building, and what they are building is increasingly delivering less for more. Median new home size dropped from 2,466 square feet in 2015 to 2,153 square feet in 2025, according to Census Bureau data. That is a reduction in size of over 300 square feet in a decade. And that reduction in size was not accompanied by a proportional reduction in price. It was accompanied by material substitutions throughout the structure that reduced the long-term quality of the asset while keeping the builder's margin intact. Thinner countertops, vinyl flooring where hardwood was standard, hollow-core interior doors, cheaper windows in reduced quantities. The average number of windows in a new home currently stands at 21. That number is projected to fall to 18 by 2027. The result is that a buyer who purchases a brand new home in 2026 is not receiving more value for a lower price. They are receiving a smaller, lower quality structure at a still elevated price, because builders have found a way to protect their margin without dropping the number on the price tag. This is not a path toward meaningful affordability. It is a path toward a housing stock that will require more maintenance, deliver less resilience, and depreciate more quickly than the homes it replaces. Building 10 million more of these does not fix the affordability problem. It scales it. The 6th and final point is about what happens next. And to be clear, this channel does not deal in predictions. We deal in what the data currently shows and what structural forces are in motion. With that discipline in place, here is what is visible. First-time buyers are at a generational low. The buyers who are currently driving the market are aging. The youngest baby boomers are in their early to mid-60s. The oldest are in their late 70s and 80s. This is a population that, over the coming decade, will either downsize, move to care facilities, or pass their homes to the next generation through inheritance. Census Bureau research and Zillow's longitudinal tracking both indicate that approximately 70% of inherited homes are ultimately sold rather than retained by heirs. That is a significant wave of inventory that will enter the market on a timeline that is not controllable and is largely divorced from current price levels or interest rate conditions. Sellers are currently staying in their homes longer than at any point in recorded history. The median tenure before selling has reached 11 years, also an all-time high. That means the sellers who are in the market right now are, in many cases, selling homes they have held through multiple price cycles and have accumulated substantial equity. They are not distressed sellers. They are not forced sellers. But as that cohort ages and that equity gets transferred through estate sales and downsizing transactions, the inventory picture changes. Combined with a first-time buyer pool that is already depleted and facing no meaningful improvement in affordability in the near term, the arithmetic for sustained price growth at the entry and mid-range tiers does not present itself clearly in this data. Markets that are heavily dependent on equity-rich boomer demand are worth watching carefully over the next 3 to 5 years. So here is the picture the data actually shows in 2026. The average monthly mortgage payment is at an all-time high. The share of first-time buyers is at an all-time low. The median age of a first-time buyer is at an all-time high. The median tenure of homeowners before selling is at an all-time high. Down payment levels are at a multi-decade high. New home size is at a decade low. And homeowners' insurance, HOA fees, property taxes, and maintenance costs are all rising faster than most owners projected when they purchased. Every single one of those data points is pointing in the same direction. What is keeping prices from collapsing right now is not demand. It is constrained supply combined with the equity-driven buying power of a specific demographic cohort. That is a real force. It is not nothing, but it is not a broad, sustainable demand base. And when the structural forces that are currently compressing inventory begin to shift, the market will not have the first-time buyer demand to absorb the change the way it historically has. If you are a current homeowner with substantial equity, the most important thing you can do is understand your full carrying cost picture and make decisions based on that reality, not on the headline median price. If you are a potential first-time buyer, do not let anyone manufacture urgency that the market itself is not generating. The data does not show a recovery in entry-level affordability on any near-term horizon. Patience, a fully costed financial model, and a clear understanding of your local market are the tools that matter right now, not fear of missing out. Housing Intel publishes 3 reports every week: Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Every one of them is built on verified data, not speculation, not opinion, not real estate industry talking points. Subscribe if you want the full picture, and share this video if someone you care about needs to hear it. We will be back with more.